Good evening. It's Jonathan Sauerschell from Blue York One News. I'm here to talk about the first game of the season for NYCFC. It actually is real now. It's no longer just preseason. It's no longer just rumors and random accusations and discussions that kind of end up going nowhere. We actually have a game to talk about. And that's what today's going to be about. It's going to be about Sunday's game, NYCFC at the Chicago Fire in Bridgeview, Illinois, at Toyota Park. Final score, NYCFC 4, Chicago Fire 3. Needless to say, when you have 7 goals scored in a game, it was a little bit interesting, and I think that's an understatement to describe this game. First off, to start up with the lineups, Josh Saunders was in goal, Ronald Matarrita was at left back, Jason Hernandez was at center back with Frederick Brilliant, and Ethan White was at right back. This was because of a late week injury to Andoni Iraola, and RJ Allen is still recovering from his own preseason injury, so they had to move Ethan White to right back and bring in Jason Hernandez, because Jefferson Mena has been out as well with injury. And that's going to be a key thing when discussing this game, is the center back partnership, because they had no time together in preseason during any of the games as a partnership, and that showed. The midfield was as expected. Andrea Pirlo, Tommy McNamara, Mick Diskerud, Tony Taylor, and Kyrie Shelton were flanking David Villa. This game got off to a pretty exciting start, as right off the bat, NYCFC looked to attack, sometimes pushing as many as 8 men forward. Unfortunately, that left a lot of room behind them, and Chicago was very happy to counterattack through David Accam and Gilberto, their main striker. What we saw a lot of was Andrea Pirlo pushing up the field, because he's not a defensive midfielder, and that's never really what he's ever done, and asking him to do that probably doesn't make a lot of sense. And because of it, NYCFC was looking to attack, and they were getting beat at the back. Chicago immediately showed that they were very dangerous on the counterattack, turning it into a track meet. It was a back and forth first 10 minutes or so, until NYCFC carved out some space for Tommy McNamara just beyond the 18-yard box, and he put in a lovely curling shot into the top corner. No way Matt Lamson, the goalkeeper, could save it, and it was quickly 1-0 NYCFC. Fortunately, this was not to last, as their inabilities to stop Chicago on the counterattack hurt them in the 19th minute, as Razvan Kokis, one of Chicago's deeper midfielders, makes a run all the way from midfield, past our midfielders who didn't seem to notice him, through our back line, stayed onside, and walked in with the goalie, walked in with the ball, and was able to easily put it past Josh Saunders to tie the game. But that didn't last long either, as within 10 minutes, Tony Taylor scored. Tony Taylor pounced on a ball in the box that was bouncing around after Chicago had kicked their own teammates in the head, and was right in the box at about the 15-yard mark. And Tony Taylor quickly had turned on it and shot it quickly into the bottom corner to make it 2-1. Not many minutes later, Kyrie Shelton got involved. After a lovely pass over the top from Mick Diskerud, he beat Brandon Vincent for pace, held him off, sustained a challenge from the goalkeeper, kept his eye on the ball, and was able to lash it home to make it 3-1. So at the halftime, we went in up 3-1, but there were significant issues with the team's defense. And it was really a twofold issue. The first was we were not getting enough pressure in the midfield area, so whenever the ball turned over, our midfielders were not pressing the Chicago player in possession. Subsequently, the Chicago midfielders were able to release passes over the top. The other issue was our 2 center backs were not on the same page. Having not played any minutes together during preseason, it showed, as Jason Hernandez tended to be 2 to 3 yards deeper than Frederick Brilliant at most times, and multiple times kept Chicago attackers onside. And it was only through either Josh Saunders, Jason Hernandez, or Frederick Brilliant's backtracking, saving tackles, or almost penalties, truthfully, were we able to actually only give up 1 goal in that half. But it was plenty obvious that Chicago had a game plan, and we needed to adjust. And also part of that issue was Andrea Pirlo is not really a defensive midfielder, and there was a ton of space between him and the 2 center backs. Way too much space for Chicago to be able to play into. Second half started, and it pretty quickly got bad for NYCFC. Frederick Brilliant was trying to play the ball from Josh Saunders. He was split all the way out right near the right touchline, as the right back, Ethan White, was all the way up the field. And actually, same thing on the left side when Jason Hernandez split out to the left to cover the area that Ronald Matarrita had left. Unfortunately, this didn't work very well because Brilliant, trying to play the ball near the sideline, was pressured by David Accam, who took the ball away from him, and with nobody really to cover the middle area because the two center backs were split wide, Kennedy and Bonanique was able to easily come walk in, take a pass for Accam, and put it past Josh Saunders for a 3-2 scoreline. And the game continued to be open as NYCFC did not make any changes for a while and still seemed to struggle with their game management. Being up on the road, you would think they'd try to sit deeper, but it did not seem that way as they continued to play their style, which, while aggressive and exciting, also left them vulnerable at the back. In the 63rd minute, however, it all seemed to pay off as Tommy McNamara made a run down the left channel towards the goal line. He held off a challenge, kept possession of the ball, and as he turns towards goal, he picked up his head and saw Mix Diskerud coming into the far side of the box, picked him out with a perfect pass, and Mix Diskerud lashed it home for a fantastic volley and a 4-2 lead. Now, at this point, you would think that the game would slow down. NYCFC would like to take some of the speed out of this, maybe play their line deeper, and they were starting to do that. And in the 68th minute, they actually made their first change of the game, and the first change of Patrick Vieira's managerial career. He brought on Mikey Lopez Jr. for Tony Taylor, switching to basically a three-at-the-back formation, pushing Ronald Matarrita into midfield, and pushing Tommy McNamara more into a left-wing role. This really did help solidify the midfield. Mikey Lopez was able to slow the game down. He acted as that defensive shield for the back line, and the game did take on a completely different tone. From that point forward, Chicago actually only got one shot on target during open play. Sorry, actually only attempted one shot during open play from that point on. So it was credit to Patrick Vieira for changing tactics. Well, maybe it took a little long. It certainly worked out. Unfortunately, that had nothing to do with what happened next. In the 71st minute, Chicago, after attempting a corner, of which they had 12 on Sunday, attempted a shot that hit Kyrie Shelton in the arm in the penalty box. Initial replay suggested that Kyrie Shelton had his arm behind his back, and really probably was a bad call. Upon further review, it's possible that he tried to move his body towards the ball and able to block it. It still seemed like a harsh call, but probably should have had two penalties called on us in the first half, so in a way, I guess it evened out. Ultimately, Chicago was able to take that advantage, put the ball in. David Accam took the penalty, put it away for a 4-3 scoreline. Even as Andrea Pirlo seemed to gesture to Josh Saunders which direction Accam was going with the penalty, Saunders went the opposite way and guessed wrong, and Accam scored. At that point, it was 4-3, but the rest of the game actually played out pretty calmly for NYCFC. They, outside of one great, interesting cross attempt laid on by Chicago that Saunders came out for and got clattered into and had his shirt ripped and potentially his shoulder hurt, which was about the 84th minute, it was a pretty quiet end of the game. As stated, putting on Lopez really did help. And actually in the 89th minute, Patrick Vieira made his second substitution. He put on Federico Bravo for Kyrie Shelton, further locking down the game. And in the end, a 4-3 victory, 3 points on the road, going into our home opener Sunday against Toronto FC. Not an ideal performance, and plenty to work on. There's plenty of questions about the midfield and the balance, which is something we've talked about since the preseason. There's certainly concerns about the back line, though it was not the first choice, or maybe even not even the second choice, as it turns out. And there's plenty of question marks about how we will be able to stop Giovinco on Sunday. But a win is a win, and opening day is always tough. It's always interesting, and any way you can get 3 points, you're going to take that. We now come home for our home opener Sunday at 5 p.m. against Toronto FC. Quick preview of that game. Toronto FC is coming off a 2-0 victory against the New York Red Bulls on opening day. Toronto FC is going to play 8 straight road games to start the season as they're finishing up another round of construction on their stadium, BMO Field. What's interesting about Toronto FC is they are currently without Josie Altidore, and he's not expected to return on Sunday because he's been out with an injury, a hamstring injury. Giovinco, therefore, was isolated on Sunday a little bit as Toronto looked to play more of a counter-attacking game, sit deep, and hit the Red Bulls over the top directly through Giovinco. It eventually led to a penalty call in the second half and then a final goal in the dying minutes to put the game away. NYCFC is going to have to watch out for that counterattack. Certainly if they were under pressure from David Accam and Gilberto, they will absolutely be under pressure from Giovinco. Michael Bradley's dropped into more of a defensive midfielder role for Toronto, and it will be interesting to see how he adapts to sustained pressure from NYCFC, who look to play a very attacking front foot sort of game. It is certainly possible that Patrick Vieira starts with a 3 at the back formation on Sunday, partially due to the narrowness of the Yankee Stadium field. The lack of width wouldn't be as big of a concern. Toronto also does not have particularly great wide players. And if Giovinco is isolated as the lone striker, anytime they counterattack, he would then be facing 3 center backs as opposed to going 1-on-2, which is odds that I actually like in Giovinco's favor often. But if he's going 1-on-3, that means NYCFC will have him covered very easily. And I think that's certainly something we could look forward to. It also would allow them to put an extra body in midfield to support Andrea Pirlo in that deeper midfield position. With that in mind, I think NYCFC has a chance to get a result from this game. They did well last year against Toronto. One time they completely shut them down and held Giovinco completely in check. Another time it was a crazy shootout game. And then a third time they actually did very, very well in September at Yankee Stadium. And again, held Giovinco in check very well. I think that they have enough attacking power to get at a new Toronto back line. And while Giovinco is always a danger, even 1-on-3, I think that Patrick Vieira is smart enough to hopefully make an adjustment there and get the game going more in NYCFC's favor. I could see NYCFC definitely getting a result of this game, at least a draw, and continuing a nice run to start the season and hopefully changing some of the narrative about the team and getting some positive momentum after what was a tough 2015 and a 2016 where many people do not think we can make the playoffs. However, a good start to the season will go a long way to reaching that goal. And with that in mind, we're almost over for this week's Blue York 1. However, there is a couple bits of news to discuss. More roster news. Last week, NYCFC announced 2 more signings. They have brought in Shannon Gomez on loan from his club in Trinidad and Tobago. The Trinidad and Tobago International does have a United States green card and had been on trial with NYCFC. He brings speed and athleticism into a right back or right wing role, and we saw him often at right wing during the preseason. So this is an exciting acquisition. He showed a lot of speed, almost lightning fast, and eventually would be an interesting addition to our squad and potentially a change of pace, because speed kills, and you can't teach it. We also have officially signed Andre Rawls as our 3rd goalkeeper. Last year, one of our draft picks from last season spent all of last year with Wilmington Hammerheads, our USL affiliate. He was officially signed to NYCFC contract as expected. He does not take up an international spot, and he will function as the 3rd keeper, which is common for any MLS team. You always have 3 keepers because if one of the first 2 gets hurt, you then need a new backup. So Andre Wells is officially a member of the team. There was also rumors today, in the process of being confirmed, that we are bringing in a new striker on loan from Corinthians in Brazil. Steven Mendoza, 23-year-old Colombian, also known with his teammates in Brazil as Speedy Mendoza, is rumored to be coming to NYCFC. As a matter of fact, his club in Brazil, Corinthians, have confirmed it themselves. We have not heard official confirmation from NYCFC at this point in time. He would actually have to use an international spot, which brings us to the final part of this news, is that all the concerns about fitting in the player Federico Bravo under international spots, potentially having to get an 11th international spot or drop an international player because we only had 10 spots or do something. None of that mattered. MLS confirmed that NYCFC had 11 international roster spots the entire time. Nobody can confirm how. Nobody seems to know, and MLS is not in a position to actually tell anybody how. Supposedly next year they'll be more transparent about that stuff. But at this point in time, NYCFC and another club, I believe it was LA Galaxy, had a mysterious extra international roster spot. So let that stoke your conspiracy fires. But either way, it's confirmed they had 11 international spots, and if they do bring in Mendoza on loan, they would need to add a 12th or drop one of the current international players. Now, that can be done in multiple ways. Jack Harrison could get a green card. Jack Harrison could be put on injured reserve. They could send one of their players down to Wilmington. They could release one of their international players. But ultimately, there will need to be a move made if we are adding Steven Mendoza, and we will have more about that for you next week on Blue York 1 News. And one final bit of information. Leading up to the game on Sunday, Josh Saunders was rumored to be seen limping, walking out of Toyota Park on Sunday. So there is a possibility he might not be able to go against Toronto. We will see as the week goes on if he is training and how he is feeling. But keep that in mind when you're looking forward to the game on Sunday. He might not be able to play. And as a reminder, the game is 5 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2 against Toronto FC, the home opener from Yankee Stadium. And with that, I'm Jonathan Sauerschell from Blue York 1 News and NYCFCBlues.com. Check us out on Blue City Radio Podcast. Have a wonderful evening. Let's go New York.